I'd like to start by saying that any positive development for Trinidad and Tobago, anything that will progress Trinidad and Tobago in the right direction, is something that the PNM will obviously be happy about and encourage. I'm starting with the whole dragon gas issue and smiling at the irony of what we're dealing with here today. Because to take your minds immediately back to President's house, just a few months ago, after the swearing in of a cabinet, and none other than the Honorable Prime Minister, announcing to the world at large, Dragon was dead with glee, Dragon is dead, and that they would pursue gas in Grenada, Guyana, and Suriname, and that is where they would be. We find ourselves right back here today. It is this PNM administration that did the hard work and the legwork from 2016 all the way through to 2025 with respect to the pursuit of the Dragon gas field, which I want to remind Trinidad and Tobago, because it is obvious that the government will mislead you and the government will be akin to snake oil salesmen. The Dragon gas field is completely within the maritime borders of Venezuela. The Dragon gas field is completely owned by the people of Venezuela. And it is the PNM government that negotiated through very difficult and trying times.
Okay, what's good, everyone? It's Nigel here, Trinidad Empowerment Network. So that was Stuart Young. That was Stuart Young explaining, kind of breaking down the madness of what's taking place here. But I'm going to try and unpack all of this a bit more for you. But before I do so, I want you to like and subscribe to Trinidad Empowerment Network. Please like and subscribe to Trinidad Empowerment Network. Get us to 20,000. Let's keep growing. And that way I'm able to bring the best factual news to you that's happening in the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago. So let me ask you the question again. How can Trinidad and the United States celebrate good news about Venezuelan gas when Venezuela themselves are not in the room to talk about their own natural resource? So let's unpack all of this. Let's break it down, the lies, the hypocrisy, and why this entire Dragon's gas deal is absolute insanity. So you heard Stuart Young there. You heard Stuart Young explaining what took place when he took charge of the country for a very short while before losing the election to the UNC. You heard about the hypocrisy. You see it loud and clear now. The UNC did not want to deal with Maduro, did not want to deal with Venezuela. They promised not to do so. It appears that they've gone full 360. So let's talk about it. The Dragon's gas field. Now, some people have made, in the comments yesterday, suggested that the Dragon's gas field may not belong to Venezuela. That's categorically untrue. The Dragon's gas field sits entirely inside Venezuela. It contains over 4 trillion cubic feet of gas. That's a lot. Under the last PNM government, Shell was already operating nearby, and plans were already in place to share the gas between Trinidad, Venezuela, and of course the shareholders at Shell, the American shareholders mainly. And of course, we know what happened. Donald Trump got involved and killed the deal. He killed the deal by pulling the OFAC license, OFAC. The OFAC license was pulled and the deal was killed simply because he holds a dislike for President Maduro. No other reason. It appears to be plainly politics. So Shell were unable to operate in Venezuela without the license being granted. That is essentially what happened. So those who are arguing about whether it was a PNM or the UNC's fault, it wasn't. It was entirely America's fault. It was entirely Donald Trump's fault on this. It wasn't the UNC or the PNM. So back then, as if you can remember, the UNC under the current Prime Minister, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, said they would never deal with Maduro. They would never deal with Maduro. They call him a narco president and use similar language that Donald Trump is currently using today. They promised to look elsewhere. They promised to look instead at Guyana and Grenada for oil and gas partnership. Just a reminder, bit of revisionist history here. But let's be honest. Let's be honest. We knew from the get-go that was nonsense. If you look at any of my video a few months ago, you would see me calling this out. Guyana publicly said they had no interest in partnering with Trinidad and Tobago. Grenada's finds are not even commercially proven. The real deal was always the Dragons gas field, because that's where the infrastructure for Trinidad to operate already exists. The infrastructure already exists. So it would have been easy to link up our pipes. I am no engineer, but to link everything up to run the gas to Trinidad. The pipelines are already nearby. It would have been, the infrastructure is already there, for want of a better phrase. So now fast forward to today. Fast forward to a few days ago. The Prime Minister comes back, let's go back to the election, should I say. The Prime Minister comes back into power, right, as we know. And she goes to the United Nations conference a few days ago, makes a quick diversion to Washington, meets with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and if by magic, suddenly the Dragons gas deal she swore was dead, she swore she would not carry on if she became our Prime Minister, is back on. And you have to ask yourself, what's changed? What has changed? Now, she's gone to Washington, had a discussion with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, not involving Caracas, not involving Maduro, and suddenly the deal appears to be back on, and we see the announcement of allegedly good news coming back from Washington. Now, I made it clear to you yesterday that this is almost comical. This is a comedy sketch. This is a sketch you would see on SNL, Saturday Night Live TV in America. The reality is, you cannot approve this deal without Venezuela. You cannot, under any circumstances, approve this deal without Venezuela. And here's a problem. Here's the first major problem, the first obvious problem. The gas belongs to Venezuela. The gas belongs to Venezuela. Washington can issue all the license they want, all the OFAC license they want, but without Venezuela's consent, nothing happens. Nothing moves, essentially. It's Venezuelan territory, Venezuelan resource. Venezuela's approval is what matters the most here. So why is our Prime Minister celebrating Washington's blessing instead of negotiating directly with Caracas? This is why this makes no sense. And if you are struggling to keep up, then I can't find any other way of explaining how nonsensical this whole idea is to you. Let alone, like I said yesterday, this will annoy the leaders of Venezuela. The mere fact that our Prime Minister is now going behind their back to discuss with Washington negotiations to take what belongs to them, their natural resources, in itself should ring alarm bells. To you, to me, and to anyone with a functioning brain. Now, even Stuart Young, as you saw here earlier, had to point out the hypocrisy here. He reminded everyone that one of the Prime Minister's first announcement as Prime Minister, one of her first announcement as Prime Minister, was that the Dragons gas deal was dead. And that she was going to pursue, if you remember, she was going to pursue Guyana, Grenada, and Suriname. Now she has made a complete U-turn, And she's now chasing Venezuelan Dragons gas again. Now, someone has to make it make sense. Stuart Young said it clearly. Cross-border gas depends critically on multilateral respect and diplomacy. That is obvious. Simply because the gas is owned by another state. Now, I know America tends to act as the bully. They tend to act as a bully. They do what they want. You can only see from my past videos what's happening in the Caribbean seas, in the zone of peace. Ships, or not ships, but speedboats being blown out of the water with no evidence of anything. Apparently, there are humans on board trafficking drugs. Have you seen evidence of drugs? Have you seen evidence of anything suggested by the United States president? Nothing. So they essentially act as a world bully. And who's going to pull the bully back into line? It appears no one is capable of doing so. And here's the geopolitical danger. Here is a geopolitical danger. Trinidad has, like I've said, historically stayed neutral in these great power conflicts. So what we are doing now goes against everything we've done historically. By aligning with Washington against Caracas, we are now putting ourselves in the middle of a US-Venezuela standoff. And if a conflict breaks out, like I've said to you many, many times before, let's be real, America is not defending Trinidad and Tobago. If you believe this, then I've got a chocolate teapot to sell you. America is not coming to our defense. They never have, they never will. In fact, they're warning their citizens not to come to Trinidad and Tobago right now. We will simply be collateral, nothing more. To think otherwise is pure delusion. America has a Category 3 warning advising its citizens currently not to travel to Trinidad and Tobago. They deem it too dangerous. So why would anyone believe America has our back? They are not going to defend us. We've seen what's happening in America now. They've got all the problems in the world. They've got problems to deal with themselves. Trinidad will simply be used, like I keep saying, as collateral, as a base for American military, quite potentially, and whatever happens to us happens. So let's call this what it is. The Dragon's gas deal is not in Trinidad's control. That's clear, that's obvious. It never was. It cannot happen, it will not happen under Maduro, it will not happen under Trump. Maybe under a different government in the future, or maybe not at all. The only thing happening right now is smoke and mirrors. A photo op. Washington gets leverage. Our Prime Minister, Kamla, gets a photo op. And the people of Trinidad get sold another dream. And I, for one, have never in my life witnessed this level of insanity. It makes no sense to me. It makes zero sense to me. So this is where we are currently. This is where we are, whether we like it or not. Who said voting voting matters, and we're learning the hard way. Voting matters, and we are learning the hard way. So, you know, a lot of people in the comments ask me questions such as, what would you do if you were PM, etc., etc. That's a loaded question, and maybe I'll do a video in future on this. And those of you who are long-term viewers of 10 have seen me made many I have given my 10 pence, my 10 cents, should I say, on what I believe needs to be done in Trinidad and Tobago. And it's not easy. It's never going to be easy. Who said governing Trinidad and Tobago was ever easy? It's not. It's not. But there are lots that we can do. And I see nothing coming from this government that's going to fix the issues we face. And that's not to say I saw much from the previous regime suggesting the same. I didn't see much from them. And I always say, when you end the year with over 600 murders, leave 623, that's a travesty. That's a travesty. And I've suggested many things that needs to be done. I don't see any of these things happening. The wealth in the country keeps leaving the country, and that's the first thing a prime minister has to deal with. The wealth in our country must stay in our country. It has to. It has to. And that's how we create jobs. That's how we create entrepreneurship. That's how we create jobs for youngsters, after school clubs, social clubs, mental health services, all the things we need in the Caribbean. to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, to create the new jobs, everything we need. That's what dealing with the core issues is what's going to solve the issues we face in Trinidad and Tobago. Giving people a livable wage, giving people prosperity, correcting the brain drain issues, making youngsters excited to live in Trinidad and not to look elsewhere. These are the things we need to tackle, the core issues. And if we do, you watch how crime de-escalates. Until we do, it will remain the same. So I will have to do a longer video on this in future. Again, for those of you who avid viewers of 10, you've seen me talk about this, but I will do a further video on this maybe in future about what Trinidad really needs to do moving forward, in my humble opinion, and based on facts. From countries similar to ours who have been successful. So that's my take. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you to each and every single one of you. And I'll see you guys on my next video. For now, much love. God bless. Take care. Look after each other. Peace.